Remote work gives a whole new meaning to rise and shine because when I wake up, I don't have to worry about rushing. The U.S. economy has lost 1.2 million jobs since April 2024, and Americans are feeling the economic downturn. The quits rate, a measure of how often workers voluntarily leave their jobs, is now down to about 2% after fluctuating in the years since the pandemic. And employers are hiring at the slowest pace since 2013, excluding the pandemic dip and rise.
I think people just want to stay with what is known and not take any risks right now.
We use the term job clinging or job hugging to denote that they're staying put rather than moving on. I think for workers that means more stress and less mobility. For companies it looks like retention, but I think it hides disengagement. And then for the economy, it slows innovation just because people aren't moving and growing.
4 out of 5 employees surveyed said they're not thriving at work. Another 58% of U.S. professionals surveyed believe they have a wide range of skills that are being underutilized in their current roles.
This all makes for a labor market that doesn't have a lot of churn in it.
There's been a lot of anxiety about the direction of both the economy and the labor market. That is part of what's keeping people in jobs, and that could be a contributing factor to this, at least, perception of disengagement that is rising.
Here's why so many Americans feel stuck in their jobs and what it means for the economy. Almost 1 in 5 job seekers surveyed said they're not confident that they will find a great job that they like.
We're in a situation where that economic uncertainty is manifesting itself in fewer people quitting as organizations hiring. There's kind of less movement in the market right now.
I think wage growth has cooled, switching premiums have shrunk, and a lot of workers worry that their pay won't keep up with rising costs. So I think they're clinging to stability in a time of uncertainty.
A lot of this does have to do with sentiment because companies are unsure about what's going to happen in the future. They see economic policies like tariffs. They're not quite sure how that's going to impact their bottom line, so they're nervous to hire people when they're not sure if they're going to have to turn around and then let people go in the near future.
While layoffs have been steady since the pandemic, many companies are choosing alternatives, such as hiring freezes or letting attrition thin their workforce.
What we did, though, is a bit different. We don't do layoffs, we just don't hire. And because you have a natural attrition of 20% in a company like ours, it means that every year 20% leaves, and if you don't recruit, you just shrink, right? What we've done is we promise all our employees some of those savings we are going to accelerate their compensation with. So they have seen an increased acceleration in their compensation due to all of the AI that we've done.
The organizations are a little bit flatter now, so I think there's a kind of middle management layer that's going away. And so employees stay put, but they're a little bit disconnected from senior leadership sometimes, so they feel a little more directionless. I think that creates stress.
Staying put may feel like the safer option, but it can come with risks for both workers and employers.
If you cling to your job and you get a little bit too complacent, that's not good either, because then your employer can look at you as sort of low-hanging fruit for layoffs in the event that they eventually need to do that. Career coaches recommend that you focus on career growth. Even if you're not able to find a new job, you focus on opportunities to improve your skills, do things within your organization to boost your career growth and your opportunities in the event that a new job comes along later. There's some data also that points to wage growth for job hoppers has slowed down quite a bit. Economists still say that job hopping is probably the best way to raise your wages.
A February 2025 study estimated that for a typical 1,000-person company, employee disengagement adds up to about $5 million a year in lost productivity. The average disengaged worker could cost the company $4,000 over the course of a year, while an executive could cost $20,000.
If they are less engaged, there's a risk to the overall productivity of that employee. So that's kind of that individual risk. But I think in many ways, the bigger risk is the network effect that that will have. Is that if you have someone who is disengaged, not putting forth the same amount of effort, but is putting forth enough just to stay under the radar, that work still needs to get done. And so that ends up falling on teammates and other people across the organization. So it can cause some additional stress even if people are engaged and people are putting forth their extra effort, they might have to go even above and beyond to make up for some of the teammates who are disengaged.
Low turnover looks like stability for employers, but it can mask what I would describe as quiet quitting. 40% of workers in a recent survey feel directionless with fewer managers in place. Therefore, they maybe spin their wheels. So I think that has impact on productivity. I think it has impact on employee satisfaction. Ultimately, can have impact on a company's ability to grow, innovate, and that translates into a cautious workforce, slows labor mobility. And labor mobility historically has been a sign of productivity and innovation.
A disengaged workforce that's clinging to their job can have implications for the broader economy and labor market. Globally, low employee engagement is estimated to cost $9.6 trillion annually, or around 9% of global GDP.
Labor mobility historically has been a sign of productivity and innovation. With fewer workers chasing new roles, wage growth flattens, and it just kind of reinforces a cycle of caution.
Oh, click the subscribe button too as well, please. Hi, Alfonso. Now clicking the subscribe button.
And this can dampen consumer confidence. It can dampen the agility of organizations and their ability to innovate and be productive.
Career coaches, economists, they all say that the labor market is very frozen right now. If you have a frozen labor market, there's not a lot of new opportunity being created. That ends up hurting people who would otherwise be finding new opportunity in the market.
Where you might start to see those types of dips is if we have a prolonged period where the labor market is challenging, a prolonged period where organizations aren't taking advantage of internal labor market movement to re-engage their employees. That's when you may expect to see a bigger hit to productivity as well.
This trend of workers staying put has also degraded job seekers' bargaining power, which can lead to flattened wages.
Employers have more power in the labor market. We've had labor standards erode in this country for decades. Things like the minimum wage has been sitting at the same level since 2009. Unionization rates in this country have declined dramatically over the last few decades. So when we think about the levers that workers have, it's pretty limited.
Workers have lost a bit of their bargaining power in the current environment. They, just a couple of years ago, were able to quit their jobs easily and find a much higher paying gig. Now, hiring has slowed down, job openings have come way down. Workers aren't quitting their jobs nearly as readily, and we see that wage growth has come down too in this environment. So workers can't command raises like they used to.
In the 3 decades following World War II, we actually saw wages and productivity move in tandem. When you think about compensation for typical workers, they moved as productivity increased. What we've seen largely for the last 4 decades or so is that has diverged. And so as productivity has continued to increase, albeit at a little bit slower pace, I would say overall, workers' wages have not kept up with those kinds of gains.
New graduates and early career workers may struggle to find entry-level jobs in the current market.
Think about recent college graduates, for example. They're not finding that it's as easy to get a new job straight out of college, an entry-level role, especially because these are roles in which there's fear that AI is disrupting those jobs especially. Think about these are entry-level jobs, kind of a stepping stone to more skilled positions down the road. It's also low-hanging fruit for AI to come in and disrupt and take those jobs away from entry-level workers.
But this could also be an opportunity for innovative companies to pivot.
If you think about the Gen Z workforce or entry-level workforce, they're much more moldable, teachable. You can reorient their skill sets. They're bright, they're sharp. I think they're street smart. They know how to a lot of hope. And so I think it isn't all doom and gloom. I think it's leaders need to think about, how do I repurpose the workforce, and then how do I get new entry or newer professionals, how do I retool their skill sets? How do I help them use AI to make better decisions, to be more productive, to do more at an earlier time in their careers? And so I think those who see it as an opportunity, if you can get the right leadership in place, the right lean workforce, leveraging technology and innovation, you can certainly grow and scale faster. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities, no doubt.
Everyone knows the score. The assholes get everything. Everyone knows the score. The assholes get everything.
And here's my thing in this. We should be, as American citizens, able to have these conversations.
Catch up, CC. God bless you. Pastor Lee, God bless you. Town, man. Big gambling town. And ain't everything in 24 hours? Yeah.
If you got something bad or evil or
They have history, everything, their religion.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Everyone knows the score. The assholes get everything, while decent people scrape for crumbs. We tell ourselves stories about karma and justice, but down we all see the same pattern. The worst people climbing highest, the kindest getting crushed. See why this happens. And spoiler, it's not about personality traits or willpower or any of this psychological garbage. This is about system architecture. When I say asshole, I'm not talking about someone who's just rude or difficult. I'm talking about the dark triad. Those who manipulate without hesitation, exploit without guilt, take without giving back. Those who see other people as resources to extract value from. You know exactly who I mean because you've met them. They probably run your company, or maybe it's your ex. The asshole wins because they're perfectly optimized for the game we're all forced to play. They don't have the internal blocks that hold everyone else back. No shame shutting them down mid-manipulation. No guilt making them reconsider. No empathy creating friction in their decision-making process.
But here's the crucial part. This isn't strength. This is just compatibility with a parasitic operating system. Let's think about it from the system's perspective. The asshole is the perfect agent. No complex moral architecture to navigate, no internal conflicts slowing them down. They are driven by simple external stimuli: power, money, recognition. The system doesn't need sophisticated programming to control. Their systems bulldozers, perfectly matched to a simple. What makes someone good in our society? They follow rules, they constantly monitor other emotional states, they question endlessly. They're causing insult discomfort to anyone. Not just harm, but any negative feeling. They'll destroy themselves before they disappoint someone. I was like this my whole life. Remember being forced to apologize even when you weren't wrong. Remember being told to share when someone just took your stuff. Remember learning that standing up for yourself was being difficult. It wasn't teaching morality. It wasn't telling control software. Programming starts even earlier in the stories you absorb before you think critically. Every fairy tale hammered the code. Good people suffer nobly until magic rewards them. Cinderella scrubs floors and stays kind until a prince saves her. The little match girl freezes to death, dreaming of warmth. Pinocchio learns that lying is worse than being exploited by adults. The giving tree lets itself be destroyed piece by piece and calls it love. The message is consistent. Endure abuse gracefully and a rescue will come, or death will at least be meaningful. The villain is always obviously evil, irrationally cruel, and ultimately stupid enough to lose. Real predators aren't like that. They're smart, charming, and they've learned to look like the prince while acting like the witch. But these childhood stories train you to wait for salvation instead of saving yourself, to endure instead of resist, to believe that suffering is just the price of eventual happiness. And this same template gets recycled forever, from Disney movies to Marvel heroes to Netflix dramas. The suffering hero who wins by staying pure. The same, just updated graphic. And then parents telling you not to be selfish, teachers punishing you for talking back, bosses expecting you to sacrifice without complaint. Every authority figure in your life, these they speak obedience. The program isn't always. There are a lot of soft versions of it. To manage your and using it. Like coach is reaching you choose your action while you're being spiritual teachers insisting you must forgive your abusers, heal. Wellness gurus selling you on letting go when you should be